have a special kind of show put together here. We're not going to talk about what's going on in the world or the country or the county or the state. We're going to talk about some interesting issues out there. And the first one is going to be women in the military.
In the military?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Get ready. Buckle up.
Go for it. Oh, you want me to start?
I'm in favor of it. Go on.
Good. Why?
Why not?
I'm absolutely agree with you. The problem you have...
They are more than capable of serving.
Yes, they are. And in many cases, as good or better as the men that are standing next to them.
From what I can tell, they make better pilots than the men do. Now, the pilots might not agree with that, but there was some studies done, and apparently, for whatever reason, they're better equipped to be fighter pilots.
If you hear this voice from beyond, Greta's joining us in these conversations.
Why, I just said something good. She's not going to yell at me for that.
I didn't say just letting them know that they hear this voice, because she's not plugging herself in with a camera.
Oh boy, get ready. Buckle up.
Okay, so anyway, there's a problem with women in the military historically in our country. Not in the world.
Careful how you said that. You might want to rephrase that one, Bill.
No.
There's a problem with women in the military.
There is a problem with women serving in the military historically in our country, and not because of the fault of the women.
Okay, do tell.
It is primarily because of the men. You know, and it's almost the custom or the mores of the males that cause most of the issues. The reality is, you know, in a foxhole with a woman and the average male out there, they're going to want to be protective more so than if it was a guy next to them. And that can cause more issues.
True, though?
Oh, I'm absolutely sure it's true.
Okay.
And I would bet my friend over there would agree with me.
I'm not saying I disagree. I'm trying to play devil's advocate right now.
Okay. I'm not hearing my friend jumping in agreeing with me either.
Okay. In some respect, I agree with you.
Oh, okay.
But not in every respect. Not in every situation. Okay?
No one's 100% except maybe me.
Go ahead, Greta. I want to hear more. Why would you not agree with him? I'm curious.
Well, because there are a lot of pretty tough ladies out there.
Absolutely there are.
Serving in units and earning respect. And you got to hold your own. You want respect, you got to carry your own water.
That's right.
I would say that there, in some cases, sure, there will be guys who feel protective and what have you, but I also think in some cases there's some ladies who would be more lethal.
Oh, that's a fair statement.
I don't disagree with you on that.
That's a fair statement.
I think all I'm going to say is Israeli Defense Forces.
That's the reason we end up with discussions like we have now. The Israelis, for example, draft men and women to their military, and they serve with distinction on both sides of that house.
And that was the point I was going to bring up to your point, which is the men being more protective of the women than other soldiers. Now, again, you've served in the military. Both of you have. I have not. But putting myself in the foxhole, if I have a man and a woman, and this is me personally, I don't know that I would be more protective of her than him. It would depend, I guess, on the situation. I could see it. I'm not saying I wouldn't be. I'm just saying I would think I would be. If, let's say, both of them were under attack, I would say I wouldn't pick her over him because of their gender. But I don't know. That's why I'm asking. You've been in, what was your experience?
Well, I will tell you that the fun part of it, and this goes back to the late 80s when they did away with the Women's Army Corps, and they brought them into the military, the WACs, and they combined them both together. And I was on training in one of the, actually it was now Fort Drum, used to be Camp Drum. And at that point we had, the order was that women to be integrated into the male units and they would act as units. And that was great. But the commanders, and again, not the fault of the women, it's the people supervising the operation. I will never forget, and I was a company commander at the time, okay? And I will never forget the orders we received as far as women on guard duty. We maintained 2 separate rosters. Everybody who was eligible for guard duty, men and women, and a separate roster. When a woman was on guard duty, the separate roster had the male watching her on guard duty. And that's a true statement. I watched that with...
Where was this? In the States or overseas?
This was at Fort Drum, New York.
So it was in the States.
Right. And this was a tactical exercise. It was not, there was no real combat going on, but we maintained two separate rosters. Everybody on guard duty who was eligible, and a separate list of men only who would pull guard duty when a woman was on to watch the woman. And now, I'm not saying she needed
pair up
it.
with her? Like,
No, not if she's over there, I'm kind of guard duty over here watching, making sure
Okay.
she's okay. You know, because something could happen. Now, again, not the fault of the women.
No, that's
It was the attitude of the males there that just couldn't adjust to it. And I found that disgusting.
Is it the males, the other guards, or was it the commanders? Because you said it was the commanders.
Well, the leadership made the
leaders.
decisions.
So again, where I want to go with this is along those lines. Is I don't know that this is necessarily what a male versus female viewpoint. I think it's a societal one. I think it goes back to, I call it the Titanic paradigm, women and children first. It's that men are disposable. Society views men as disposable. Send them off to war, don't care about their mental problems. You see where all the money is on things like domestic violence. You see it with mental care, all of that. Any money that goes towards men is a fraction.
I'm not
You
sure.
look at breast cancer versus prostate cancer. The death rates are roughly equal, but yet breast cancer gets 6 times as many. The reason I bring all that up is it talks about the disposability of men, and I think that, more than anything else, goes back to what you're
Well,
talking
I don't think
about.
culture dictated that men were disposable. I think culture traditionally has dictated specific roles for men and women. And, you know, historically, the role of the man is the hunter-gatherer and fighter if necessary. And historically, the role of the woman was the raising the family, taking care of X, Y, this, having the children, you know, and doing X, Y, and Z. Now, that's the problem you're looking at. Not that men were disposable, but historically, they've had specific roles.
I think it even goes further than that. I do think men are disposable, and I'll tell you why that whole mentality, I believe, came about. I want you to think about it in this term. It's biological. If something happens to me and a bunch of men, but there's one man left and 10 women, he can impregnate all 10 of them, and the species can go on.
Tough job, but someone's got to do it.
Doesn't work the other way, right? And I'm not saying in one
teasing, of
small
course.
thing, but you get my point,
Yeah,
right?
I do.
Is, you need one man. A woman can have one baby a year, roughly. A man can have literally millions if he wanted to.
You see, but under that theory, you go back biblically, there was only Adam and Eve, and look what they did.
Don't even get me started on that whole thing.
I thought I'd bring that up
But
biblically.
you get my point with it.
Yeah, I do.
It's biological. Your point is also valid, right? It was the roles got defined 400, 500, 600 years, 1,000 years, 2,000, so on. That's all well and good, but we're in 2023. And I firmly believe, one, that women are absolutely capable of serving in the military. Now, do I think they should be in special forces, or that let me rephrase that. Do I think that we should adopt the requirements and lessen them to allow them in special forces? No, I don't. If they can ruck 80-pound sack just like a guy can, let them in.
Well,
But I don't think when we're saying, well, you have to do, I'm just picking numbers, 100 push-ups, guys, but women only have to do, 30, say? That's not for special forces or something like that.
you know, there was a movie out about being a SEAL. with
G.I. Jane, right?
G.I. Jane, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that issue is a separate issue, but there are women that I've seen outperform men in many areas.
Absolutely.
My concern, and I think you really need to think about this, is our society ready to accept women casualties at any great
No.
level? Because that will bring you back to Gulf War and Gulf Two. There were lots of men wounded, etc., dead, etc., etc. When that one woman was shot down,
That's
there
the
was
one I was just
everybody was there taking film, and I don't minimize her death.
Not in any way. No.
But at the same token, there was a bunch of other guys too. It should have been treated equally, but it was not. It became a spectacle.
It's 98-point-something% of the casualties were male. I forget the exact number, but it's in that area. but yet they worry about the one or two. It's like my wife when we watch a movie. If a dog gets killed, she'll turn the movie off. 5 million people could get killed, but she cares about the dog. She literally made me stop watching a movie because the John Wick, one of the John Wicks.
Oh, the very first one.
The dog got hurt. She didn't care. How many people died in that movie?
Too many.
She's fine with it, but that dog, it's the same scenario.
Yeah, but the question is our society prepared to accept multiple female casualties? Because that's a reality.
I don't think for a second they are right now.
You know, you look at the Israeli group; they accept it because it's their reality.
They don't have a choice.
Right, it's their reality.
Right.
But you know, we have historically not been there yet. You know, and we're breaking down the glass ceiling, if you will, in many areas, and rightly so. But until we change that reality, it's not a lot's going to change.
Well, we're breaking down the glass ceiling, but we're not breaking down the glass floor. So what you're talking about, who suffers the most casualties in a war? It's not the generals.
No,
it's the grunts, right? So there's a big push. We've got to have women in various,
frontline assignments.
All that stuff. What we're talking about is the difference between, let's look at it from the corporate world. We're so worried about getting women to be CEOs, but we don't want them to be ditch diggers. Nobody fights to get equality there. When was the last time you heard a fight over ditch digging? Zero. But we got to get, and I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I'm just simply saying, take that modality and transfer it to the military because it's exactly the same. And to your point, I don't think we are even remotely close to accepting those kind of casualties.
Yeah, well, and again, that's a problem. That's a cultural issue, not
societal. I call it societal. Yeah.
It is not an issue of the ability of people to do that. I've met women that can outshoot me in a minute, and you do whatever you want to do. But
my wife is 4'10" on a good day. She can put center mass 100 times better than I can.
She's got a direct line to sight, though.
I mean, when we go shooting, she literally every single time the target goes out, she takes her first shot dead center in the Adam's apple. Every single time. She never misses. And then she goes from there. And I'm like, I say to her, well, why? I'll just let you know. I mean, she's joking, but
maybe
way better shot than me. But I'm, a foot 3 inches taller than her and outweigh her 3-to-1. If something, were to go down and we both are on the front lines, the honest truth is, and I'm not trying to knock women in any way, is I'm much more capable to fight as far as overall, not shooting, but like if we had to climb a mountain carrying whatever equipment, how many pounds does the average infantryman carry?
Depends on what they're carrying, but they could be 50, 80 pounds.
Let's just use
they're carrying full pack.
Full pack, let's say 60 pounds. Who's going to be able to get up that mountain better?
Well, not every troop can carry that too, but some of them are also going to carry mortar plates and they're going to carry tubes, whatever their weapons are.
Right? There's always exceptions. Again, that's not a knock on women. That's simple biology. That's all it is. Does that mean women shouldn't be precluded from doing it? No, I think they absolutely should serve. I think they should serve in the front lines.
And they have, and they've done well.
There's no reason to me they can't be on a ship. There's not one position on a ship that I don't think a woman can be in. I can't name one. I would argue the same in the Air Force. Can you name of a position that they couldn't do every bit as capable? I can't. The only place I could say different, and again, it's strictly the biological argument, is the front lines as far as infantry.
Marines and Marines and Army.
And again, if a woman can do that, by all means, let her in. I think there should be female SEALs, as long as they can meet the criteria, or Rangers, or.
But there's also a certain reality when you talked before about 30 and 100 and whatever else. Mm-hmm. There's a reality of the difference between men and women, and you know this as a trainer. Center of mass is different, men and women.
That's my point, yeah.
So therefore, they're not going to be able to do the same things because of that center of mass.
Exactly. And that's why it comes down to that point. Now, you could argue against me by going the IDF, because those women hold their own with the guys. Israeli Defense
Absolutely
Forces.
True. But again, it's It's the cultural issue, not the physical issue in
I
most
agree.
cases.
I think it's all
And,
about,
and
yeah.
we're about ready to wrap this segment up here
Well,
because
we're going to come back and talk about drafting.
we'll talk about drafting and other things, but right now we have to pay a few bills. So, women, we're all for you. Get out there and shoot a few.
At least you didn't say get out there and die for us. And we're back to Reclaiming America. So we're having a discussion about, well, we started off with women in the military, and we're going to work our way towards just military preparedness in general. But I kind of want
Right down to private, not just general.
But I kind of want to put something in the middle of that, which touches on both ends of that, which is there is a lot of talk out there about drafting women. There's been talk of the draft being reinstated, not registering for it, the actual draft. Whether that'll happen or not, we don't know yet. And there's been proposals to also require women to be forced to register and ultimately to be drafted, which leads into the next part of it is, do you think that's something that should be done because of our need for military preparedness?
The first problem you face, and our soldiers know this, and I think we've talked about it before. In the event the balloon goes up and there's a full battle and we're committing everything to everything we've got, by the time we get through the active, the reserves, and the guard, getting everybody pulled up, they know that there will be no fresh recruits or replacements coming in for 6 months. So whatever's there has to hold on for 6 months until the draft happens. They get screened. They go to camp. They learn basics of being in the military. They go to an AI school and learn the special trade or technical skills that they have to go compete in combat. And it could be not, we're not just talking about infantry soldiers. We're talking about drivers. We're talking about mechanics.
Yep.
We're talking about computer experts. We're talking about everything. Mm-hmm. So there's no replacements coming without the draft, and that's going to be 6 months from the balloon going up.
Do you think the war will last that long? With technology being the way it is.
Yeah, I do, because I think both sides are going to sit back and not pull their biggest strings out because they know there was no.
See, now I think it's going to be the exact opposite. I think it'll be all out, no holds bar, fire everything in the first couple of months, and then there's going to be a lull, similar to what happened with Germany, where they went into Poland, they went into Czechoslovakia and all of them, and then you kind of had a non-war from the early part of 1940 until they attacked France. They kind of sat back. Everybody kind of regrouped.
But Hitler and crew were sitting back waiting for the response for going into Poland because
and nothing happened.
No big deal when you're sending tanks in again and they're coming at you on horseback.
I mean, if we're talking realistically, where's the war going to be with Taiwan, right? Middle East, Ukraine, Russia. I think if let's use the Middle East just to have something. If something happens where Iran goes after Israel or vice versa, and we get in the middle of it, those carriers aren't sitting there to go, well, yeah, we're just going to take our time. They're going to go on everything. And then, I agree with you, then there's going to be a lull, and then we have to backfill, because the odds of them hitting a carrier are slim, but they could.
But we do have 11 carriers compared to the rest of the world,
mm-hmm.
and they are fairly well defended. And what they give the United States is something they really didn't have in other wars to any great extent, because the argument has always been running your supply lines, running your attack lines from where? We've managed in World War II to set something up in London to start our air bases. I've talked in Turkey. I've been on roads that were secretly developed that went from 2 lanes to 8 lanes because that's an Air Force landing strip when they need it.
Mm-hmm.
The difference with an aircraft carrier is you can go anywhere in the world and deliver immediate air support, attack support, defense support, whatever you need, and in large numbers. You're talking about 85 to 100 and some odd planes that can go up in the air and deliver whatever they need, wherever they want it.
Up to and including nukes.
Right, and we have that. Really, nobody else is close to us. I think China has 2 of them, And what's interesting about China is the data shows that they may have the aircraft carriers, they just don't have the planes to put on it.
And even if they did, those carriers won't last a day because the subs will take them. that's so. If we're fighting Taiwan, let's say, I think, like I said, I think you're going to see all out, no holds barred right off the bat. Taiwan, if that's the jumping off point, China can't attack Taiwan and not attack us. And our bases. We have bases in the Philippines, we have bases in Japan, so those two countries are getting attacked.
There's also about 50,000 troops in South Korea.
There's South Korea is another option. And then there's Guam. All right. I don't see China going, we're going to attack Taiwan and not go after those. They're going after all of them. And they're not going to launch one missile. They're going to launch everything. And then they're going to run out of missiles. And we're going to be defending. And that's where the draft comes in, is you're backfilling all that. I don't think the war will last 6 months. I think the human race will last 6 months, if I'm being honest. I just think it's going to, when it goes, it's going.
If you're talking about limited wars, and that's what we're basically talking about,
is it limited?
In small areas.
Yeah, and that's the question. Is it going to stay limited? We don't know.
If it become a worldwide war, then we have an issue in multiple fronts.
I think the way things are going, Bill, it's inevitable it's going to be a world war. Because, again, look at where we're fighting. We're fighting in Russia and Ukraine. We're fighting in the Middle East. Taiwan's a possibility. You've talked about it before. North America is not exempt from battles with
anymore.
All the people coming in. I think it's going to be on the same scale of, say, World War II, where other than South America, every other part of the world was involved.
Well, there was really no issues in America as we see the United States. Because
but we were
had the
involved, though.
We were involved, but we weren't having issues on our shores.
It wasn't on our shores, but we were involved.
But I'm not sure that would be valid to stay along that way either.
I think, as far as military preparedness and going back to the draft, I do think it's going to come into play. I just worry that we may not get to that point.
So anyway, I started looking at some of the military might of the world.
Okay.
And it was interesting facts to go out there. Comparing China, comparing Russia, as our biggest number. What's interesting is right now China can put 2.19 million soldiers on the ground.
Souls. Okay.
Right. We can put about 1.4 million, all types of soldiers, Marines, sailors, whatever. So they have superior number. Where our advantage comes in is in technology. We have the equipment that nobody else has. We have a better way of protecting our soldiers so they will survive better. And they can, in tanks, in planes, in ships, so that their survivability, or the durability, if you want to be crude with it, they will survive to fight longer.
Do you think the difference in the size of the armies and armed services really is going to come into play that much as far as a world conflict? Because China may outnumber us, 2.5 to 1 roughly? Mm-hmm. But they can't get them here, right? There's a little thing called the U.S. Navy. There's no way China's invading the U.S. It ain't happening. Now, if we have to fight in Asia, sure, like China itself. But even them trying to get all those troops to, let's say, Australia or Japan, one thing I will say, our Navy probably could take on every other Navy combined, and we'd still win.
When you ask that question, our numbers are interesting when you start talking about Navy. We have 11 aircraft carriers, which we talked about. Mm-hmm. We have 91 aircraft destroyers, and those are missile ships, whatever. And then you get into submarines. Okay,
and there's the big one right there.
And you start looking, and each one of those aircraft carriers can hold anywhere between 85 to 110 planes. So that's a massive amount of firepower that can be concentrated.
If I remember right, the U.S. Navy is the second largest air force in the world, behind the U.S. Air Force.
Yes, behind the U.S. Air Force, which, speaking of that, with flight capability, which is another interesting fact, we have 2,100 fighters, planes. There are 967 attack helicopters, or choppers as we tend to call them in the military. 900 air transports, and then there's many of the special aircraft that we have out there, and we're not even talking about the B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, the A-10s, the Thunderbolts, and the Apache Telcoplets. You just can't go near those things.
Yeah, it's again, it goes to what kind of a conflict is it going to be? Where is it going to be? How many different conflicts is it going to be? We've got clearly the best Navy.
And the best Air Force.
And if you're looking at a battle, well, say the Air Force is going to come into play against China, but it's going to primarily be a naval fight, I think. Because if you look at the closest bases for the Air Force would be Guam, Philippines, Japan, South Korea. They're going to those bases are going to get taken out first. So it's going to come down to the carriers. And ultimately, I think the submarines. Our submarines are so much better than everybody. I mean, it's...
Yeah, they go down and those nukes go into there for 6 months, and they come up just to see what's going on in the real world.
Yeah, people don't realize, and you probably know more than I do on it, but people don't realize when Russia sends out one of their boomers, their nuclear subs, if you think one of our subs isn't sitting on their tail waiting, you're crazy, right? Whereas them trying to find our subs, our boomers, is a whole other ballgame. And I'm not saying that to be, an arrogant American or anything. That's just the reality. You're seeing, you look at the Ukraine conflict. There's an interesting thing there, right? You look at how was Russia's army viewed prior to that conflict? Pretty much on par with the U.S.
Yeah, they were absolutely
maybe better.
They were going to be the horrors that we were going to face.
Like we wouldn't really stand a chance against them in Europe, even as recently as 2020. People were making that argument.
And I remember when I was in the Army, we talked about if the Russians rolled all their tanks, when we had people in Berlin, we had people all around there. Berlin lasted 4 hours.
Hours, say hours, not days.
And then within 10 days, those tanks would reach the English Channel.
But now that we see they can't even get to Kiev, let alone Berlin, let alone the Channel.
Do you know where our problem is? And no one's addressing this, including the idiot in chief. Supply-wise, and specifically petrol.
Well, that's there. That's a good point.
You can't fly a plane. You can't. Now, nuclear reactors are separate, but planes and tanks and whatever else still need fuel. And he's managed to take our strategic storage down to about 19 days.
And the other side of that is he's also taken out our ability to produce our own.
Yes.
So if a world war happens, we're in trouble.
And he's allowing Iran to sell 4 million barrels. And, maybe we're not buying that, but other people can buy that to free up other oil coming to us, like Venezuela, whatever else. And they could all shut down that pipeline. And he's actually endangering this country with fuel, if nothing else.
The military situation is going to be dire for fuel. And then that's ultimately what stopped, in a lot of ways, the German army. They did not have fuel. We're at a point where we could have said, all right, well, let's say the balloon goes up in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is not producing now, or if they do produce, it ain't getting here. I don't care what you say. It ain't going to happen because Iran could shut down the Persian Gulf with missiles.
Iran could take out Kuwait.
They could take out Kuwait, all of those things, right? So you have to take the Middle East oil off the table now. So now where are you getting it from? Venezuela, which is not the most friendly country towards us.
Well, in
so
addition to that,
two options: we either buy it or we take it,
or we produce it.
I'm saying from Venezuela.
Yeah.
So, but to ramp up production again, that ain't happening overnight.
No, that's not. Though the heavy wells would be an issue, but you could get started pretty fast when they were doing this stuff where they were the fossil fuel digs, the short ones at one angles. I forget the name of it now. Fracking. That could start up fairly quickly. They could start producing there fairly quickly, whereas the big wells are an issue. But
I don't know if that would generate enough to cover military needs.
Well, the bigger concern is
I honestly don't know.
Running production here, because don't forget, if we're making ammunition, if we're making replacement tanks, if we're taking care of our population, they need fuel too.
Well, yeah, they'll ration fuel and stuff, but your point is valid, right? I mean, how many gallons per mile does an Abrams get? Not miles per gallon, gallons per mile.
Maybe 8. Maybe 8 gallons per mile.
I mean, realistically, that's...
Yeah, you're talking about a 60 to 70 ton tank.
Right, yeah, I mean, we're not
with
joking.
two
It literally is gallons
800
per mile.
horsepower
Yeah.
engines.
So, literally you need a tanker truck, almost one per tank, pretty much, right? I mean, I know it's not quite that bad, but...
Well, you need to... Those tanks go into combat and there's fuel not far behind.
They're right there with them, right?
They're following them in a reasonable distance, and what you'll end up having is somebody pass through, and then they bring the stuff up to
But if
top
they
of
don't
them.
have anything in those tanker trucks, the tanks are effectively
Well,
useless.
look what happened with Germany in World War II.
Exactly.
They actually at one point made a plan to capture a base of ours, which had fuel when they were doing the Battle of the Bulge.
The whole Battle of the Bulge was
and they
centered on
floated tanker 55-gallon drums down the water so they could pick them up and fill them. And we got and stopped them. Not necessarily what we were doing there, but right now, sir, I think we have to take another break
Well
to
played,
pay our
sir.
people, and we'll come back and we'll discuss who's the number one power in the world.
that. Okay.
All right.
Sounds like a
See
plan.
you soon. It's time to discuss. Welcome back, by the way, to Reclaiming America.
Who's the big cheese?
And we're going to discuss who the BBMFIC is in the world. MFIC.
I know what, we can't say it, Bill. Big bad,
In charge.
big bad, mustard.
Military force. There you go.
Well,
The voice from.
See, she's the brains, we're the beauty.
There you go. We're in big trouble. God help us. They
You're
would
like
have
that.
switched those jobs.
I was waiting
Anyway,
to see what I was going to refer
Global
reaction.
Firepower is a group that rates military standards around the world as far as what each army has and how good they are, et cetera, et cetera. And they use like a 50-point factor to decide what's what. And that includes weapon numbers, diversity, natural resources, manpower, and financial stability.
Diversity? Oh.
Well,
Careful.
diversity of weaponry.
Okay. Make sure you clarify that, Bill.
Not diversity as we tend to play it
I was
here,
gonna say,
but
be
your
careful.
ability to develop various kinds of weapons
Gotcha.
and deliver them in the battlefield.
Gotcha.
Okay? And so they came up with the 20 most formidable military forces in the world. Okay?
I already know who number one is.
And they would be
Russia. No. The U.S., obviously.
the United States. Interesting, 0.00 is a perfect score.
And we're what, 0.01?
0.07.
I was saying.
You're like 7/100ths from the top
Okay,
target,
yeah.
okay? The one thing I disagree with them, we have a great score. We have 2.2 million people in service, 1.4 in active duty, 6,100 tanks for disposal, and they seem to think that having the largest defense budget in the world at $740 billion is an important factor.
Might have
But
something to do with it.
But we don't weigh in the fact that there are different values in different countries, so that I look a little bit different on.
Yeah,
Number 2 in the world.
Don't tell me. I
Okay.
have not seen it. Number 2. I was going to say that, but I'm going to change it. My first thought was Great Britain. I'm going to go China.
Wrong. Russia.
Okay, that list.
This is on paper now.
Throw that list right in the trash, Bill. Throw it right in the trash.
They have a score just about 7.91, 07.91.
On
It
what
has 3.5
planet?
million people in its military, about 1 million of them on active duty.
What is this dated from?
This is just summer.
This past summer.
This
how
past
many?
summer.
How many are in the military?
They have about 3.5 million people in the military,
Is that-
about 1 million are in active
Is
service.
that counting the 100,000 they lost last month?
Obviously. They also have,
my
or at
God.
least they had 13,000 tanks. I'm not sure how many of them were left.
Actually, the last thing that I saw was they are losing several hundred per month and only replacing like 50. So they're down to like their last couple thousand tanks, most of which are 60 years old.
And a great number of them we gave them.
That criteria that they're
Okay.
using, it kind of blows the validity of your little...
Number 3 is China.
See, now, yeah, okay, yeah. I would put China ahead of Great Britain, but barely.
It has 3.3 million people in its military, which is active and
So they're
reserve.
basing a lot of it on the size of the military as far as personnel.
2.1 of them are in active service, and keep it, which is one thing they're pointing out, that large number is only 2%, is only 0.2% of their total population. That's an interesting number to play with. They have 3,200 tanks, and they're only spending $17 billion a year to keep their place
Yeah, I
running.
don't buy that one at all,
Okay.
but go on.
Number 4 is a surprise to me.
So I'm guessing it's not Great Britain, who I would have said.
Okay, it's actually India.
Interesting.
It is. Has involves 5.1 million people with 1.4 million in active service, and its total military size is only 0.4% of its
And
population.
that makes total sense to me that they would be that large because one of their mortal enemies is China.
Right. And they have 4,700 tanks, and they spend $73 billion on their budget to keep them running. Number 5, and this I find extremely interesting since we have a treaty that says they can't have one. Did I give you a good enough lead on that one?
Japan was going to be where.
Japan is where you're
It's
at.
Japan, yeah.
You know, they have
They have a defense force, Bill.
yeah, they do. 319,000 people, 250,000 in service.
They don't have aircraft carriers, but
They have 1,000 tanks at its disposal, and they're spending 50.
They have ships that carry airplanes and fly them off of them, but they're not aircraft carriers, by the
Right.
way.
They're defensive ships.
I forget what they call them, but they don't call them aircraft carriers.
Number 6. Want to guess? And I'll give you this. It's an ally.
I was going to go Pakistan because of India, but Great Britain then.
No, South Korea.
They're that large. Okay, you're surprising
South
me on that one.
Korea has
I don't like their criteria,
6.7
though.
million in its military, which is 12%, almost 13% of the population. Their only active server is only 600,000. It has 2,600 tanks at its disposal. So they are number 6.
See, I don't like their criteria, Bill.
They're
They're going by size of army.
They're going by 50 different criterias.
Yeah, but the big one you keep mentioning is how many people are in,
Also compared to what's available.
and also how much their budget is. But go on.
France is number 7
Doesn't surprise me there.
with 406 tanks.
Wait a minute, what?
406.
406.
6 tanks.
Do
But then
each
they
one-
have the Maginot Line.
I do have questions. Do they have white flags on each one of them?
No, but they're facing the wrong
Yeah, I
people.
went there.
They're facing at their own people. It's easier.
They have a whopping 406 tanks.
Right, and 450,000 people in the military, of which 270,000 are active. Number 5
That one actually
Number
blew my
8.
mind with that one.
is the United Kingdom.
Okay, so they're finally coming in. Okay.
Okay, they have 275,000 in the military, and they only have 109 tanks in their force.
Now let me ask you a question. 109?
109.
And they shipped how many Challengers over? So it ain't 109 ain't there anymore.
Well, they're still theirs. They may be some other places. But
See, now this speaks to perception, because if you, like, and kind of where Greta, I think, was kind of agree with this, is I would have said Great Britain was much higher up on the list, first of all. And second of all, if you wanted to have someone as our partner, that'd be the first person I would have said. Not South Korea, not Japan. I would have said
but
Great
again,
Britain.
consider the Great Britain is an island.
No, I get that. What I'm talking about is the perception we have versus
So,
the reality.
If you're looking at reality for them, their air force and their navy is going to be much bigger than their ground
But that's
troops.
factored into...
It's all factored in this with their numbers.
Right.
But just logically, being an island, they're going to have much more of a navy. They're going to have much more of an air force because they still have that English Channel barrier, which helps protect them. Number 9 is Brazil.
That one shocks me.
Okay, 2 million people in
Really?
the military, 350,000 in active
you know that
service.
Would you have ever guessed Brazil was even on the list? If I'm being honest, you've got, what, 20 there?
20, top 20.
I would, if you gave me 50 guesses, I wouldn't have said Brazil.
Okay, and they have 439 tanks.
Why in the hell do they need such a large army?
Well, because they keep their army in their sleevey.
I mean, seriously though, who's going to go after Brazil?
You have to be able to defend yourself.
I get that.
And they
but-
have the Amazon. They have to. All those tribes could come out of there and get them. I guess.
Well, I'm thinking, I guess Venezuela would be a threat to them, right?
Yep.
Right, God?
Pakistan's number 10.
I knew they'd be on the list, yeah.
Okay, They have 2,680 tanks, and they have about 1.7 million.
Wait a minute. They have
in the mil-
2,680
tanks. They also have about 1.7 million in the military, of
Okay.
which 650 is inactive.
Let's your list. I have some problems with your list, my friend.
I'm waiting to hear that.
Well, you got France with their, what is it, 410 man carrying
406
coffins
tanks.
with white flags on them.
I didn't
are
say that,
considered
Frenchman.
stronger than Pakistan with 2,600. Okay, go on.
Okay, well,
I think your list is flawed.
okay, we'll take that. Number 11 is Turkey.
That one doesn't surprise me at all.
The
I kind of knew they'd be on the list.
3,000 tanks, just a little over 3,000 tanks. It has about almost 900,000 people, of which 400,000 roughly are in the active military. So, but
And that 400,000 is worth about 2 million.
yeah, I will tell you, I've done extensive training with the Turkish military, and I will, the best example I can give you, I went over with the 82nd at one point, and they had a Turkish platoon for one, and we had a 82nd. We both went for runs, so you run miles forever, whatever. We all finished, but we looked like we ran. The rest of them are standing there looking like, so what's the next
Is
500
a casual
miles?
stroll for them?
Yeah, it was fascinating. They had said for years that the Turkish military was the best equipped 1950s army in the world, and this was in the 80s. So they don't have a lot of the good equipment that they need, but their soldiers. What I remember when I was training with them, when each soldier signs into the Turkish military, and this was when Russia was a major issue.
Yeah.
Part of their enlistment swearing in was a thing that they would kill 10 Russians before they died.
Yeah, they're mortal enemies. So
Yeah, so that was an interesting number with them. So on number 12, and flags are up, Italy.
stunned.
Well, you know
Again,
what this?
you got me stunned.
You know
on
what
that
this is, right? I'm not going to go there, right?
one. That's the French bill.
Yeah, no, there's another group there too.
I am shocked Italy's army's that big.
They have 371,000 people in its military, and they only have 200 tanks.
See, they keep basing this on personnel. I'm not. a big
They also
fan of
base
that.
it on budget.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan on this.
Number 13 is Egypt.
Over Israel.
Yep. They have 3,735 tanks.
If you had to go to
About
war,
1.3 million.
Okay. If you had to go to war with an ally, would you take Israel or would you take Egypt?
I think the 6-Day War proved that already.
And I'm not. I'm sorry.
Do you remember the line of tanks that were leaving as
I
they
was going to
walked
say
back?
your list is very flawed there, Bill.
Okay. Iran is number 14 by this group,
That would not surprise me.
which has almost 2 billion people in the military, and which they
Billion
have
people?
almost 2 million people.
Oh, I was
excuse
going
me.
to say 2 billion.
Of which about 500,000 or so are active,
I'm
and
like,
it has
"Ugh."
3,700 tanks. Now remember, not being put here in these numbers are also their Air Force, their Navy. This
Yeah,
is not
these are
being
kind of
reflected.
important things there, Bill, that they left
But it's
out.
built. There's 50 items they're
I don't
commenting
care
on.
if there's 3 million Chinese soldiers. If they can't get here to fight us, that doesn't mean anything.
They're already here. They're coming in from the north.
Okay, keep going.
Number 15 is Germany.
I mean, are we even remotely surprised at that? And that's their defense force,
Right. They only have 244 tanks in their defense force.
of which they sent half of them, I think, over to Ukraine
Right.
at this point.
Number 16 would be Indonesia, which has about 332 tanks and a little over 1 million
So
people
they're
in the military.
emphasizing tanks, personnel, and budget.
Yeah.
That's their whole criteria.
No, there's 50 items. These
I
are the
don't
things
care.
they pull out of
Bill,
it.
that's the 3 criteria.
Number 17 is Saudi Arabia.
Again, that doesn't surprise me.
It does me because they do a lot. They buy a lot of good things, but I love the Saudis in certain aspects. But they would not know what to do if they actually had to fly them and use them. They have all the greatest toys in the world.
Yeah, they'll pay somebody to fly it for them. Hurry up, we got 2 minutes. Get to the rest of them.
All right, number 18 is Spain.
Again, a little bit of a surprise for me.
Okay,
Not shock, but a surprise.
it has more tanks than Australia, 327. Only has about 250,000 soldiers. Number 19, Australia. which has only 59 tanks and only 80,000
You
military
left
people.
one big one off, and I don't know who it is.
And there's number 20, Israel.
It's got to be Israel, yeah.
Okay, Israel has, they have a military conscript. Everybody turns 18, male or female, have to go in. The country has 643,000 million people with 170,000 on ground, and they're not even talking about the number of tanks they have.
They have 9 million people because every person serves.
Right. Unfortunately,
And their 70-year-old grandmas will outdo most of those other people you listed. 20-year-olds.
unfortunately, they didn't arm them, like we talked about in a different circuit. Anyway, that's the latest scoring from Global Firepower, which is a comprehensive index of military strength measuring power based on 50 individual factors, including weapon numbers, diversity, natural resources, manpower, and financial stability. All those are built into that.
I have some serious problems with that list, but okay.
Okay, that's a fair statement. But anyway, we thought we would share that information with you, so we are still the number one person in the world. And the advantage that anybody says, that I got a couple of people here that, in various topics, the reason we are where we are is technology. For example, if you don't know what a smart bullet is.
Railguns.
No, smart bullets are...
No, I'm talking also we have railguns.
We have a lot of things. But anyway, look up a smart bullet once to find out what we're doing. Look at our equipment. And anyway, at this particular point, we have to say adieu.
Adieu.
Adieu. Or
if you're going to say it right, you got to say adieu.
Adieu. Or...
Or if you want to say it the French way. Oh.
Anyway, we'll be talking to you soon. Bill and Dan. And you want to tell them how to find us?
Just go, Bill, because I'm in enough trouble for this.
If you're French, his name is Dan. You can find him in Wilmington.
Technically, my last name is Roman, is French, but I'm actually German and Italian. Moving on. Have a good one.
Have a good one, people. Bye-bye.